The number one question I get, is that thing gonna bite me? And the answer is almost always no. Unless we're talking about one of these reptiles. I say all the time, reptiles aren't aggressive. There's other reasons they want to bite you, but is there exceptions? To dive into this, let's talk about my most aggressive reptiles. It's not gonna be a top 5, there's like 9 or 10 of them. Let's start off with Frankie. Now, obviously you guys know Frankie isn't aggressive, so what is the point of having him on the list? Well, the reason is when I got him, he was really defensive, which is going to be a theme here. Defensive and aggressive are different. Aggressive means, or at least to me, I didn't look into a dictionary for this, and you can let me know in the comments section if you disagree with my definition. Aggressive being they are trying to hurt you. Their whole point of what they're doing is to try to hurt you aggressively without being prompted. Defensive is they're trying to get away from you or they're trying to deter you from trying to hurt them. So for example, an animal biting you to try to get away from you, it's defending itself. An animal running up to bite you for no reason, that would be aggressive. Frankie was never aggressive. He was always defensive, but we're gonna talk about defensive animals too and what the difference is. Frankie here is a Fiji banded iguana, well, a Tonga banded iguana. Technically, they're different than Fiji's. Hint, hint. We're gonna talk about that later because maybe I got, and anyway, the point is he was trying to bite me every time I put my hands in the enclosure. I would try to put my hands in, try to bite me. I think it was a defensive thing. I think he was trying to just defend himself because I'm this big scary animal to him and he didn't want me to touch him. Turns out that Frankie's actually pretty chill, and after a while of handling him and getting him used to me, now I can put my hand in there and he just climbs right on. There's no issues whatsoever. Plus, I mean, I just wanted to show you the most beautiful animal that I probably the most beautiful animal I own. Number 2 is another great example of some animals of the same species will be aggressive or defensive in this case, and some won't. I've got 3 rhino rat snakes. Rhinoceros rat snakes are super cool. This is a Southeast Asian colubrid. They're semi-arboreal, semi-aquatic. I'm making the craziest enclosure and I can't wait to show you. And the 3 that I have different personalities. One of them is sweet as punch. No problem. I could take videos and pictures and whatever. The other one's kind of standoffish, but probably not gonna bite you, just kind of try to get away from you. And then one does this. This is the first snake bite I've ever actually shown on the channel. It wasn't a big deal. As you can see, my wife is literally laughing. It didn't hurt at all. The snake bit her once before that too. And the reason I decided to show it here is because this is just a snake that's really defensive. It's just really scared. This is the smallest of my rhino rat snakes, the one that we handle the least because it came out of the egg just a lot more defensive than the other ones. And it's a personality thing. You know how some people have no problem going on a stage and giving a speech and other people literally will pass out? We're the same species, it's just some of us are different. And the same thing can be the case with animals. Of course, it can be environmental. It can be that maybe the enclosure isn't as good as another enclosure and they don't feel secure. Maybe they had a bad experience handling before. There's a bunch of things that can happen, but keep in mind, no matter how much you work with certain, say, dogs, for example, one golden retriever could be a service dog and the other one's always gonna be kind of a spaz, you know? And I've got one of those. My golden retriever is never gonna be a service dog. I mean, she performs the service of being super cute, but she's just crazy. Same thing with my rhino rats. Some of them are great, one of them isn't, and this is probably my most aggressive, I'm gonna call it defensive, snake that I have, or at least one of them anyway. Well, there's a few more, but we'll get into those. If you follow the channel, you knew Pittsburgh was gonna be on the list. Pittsburgh is a Maclat's python. This is a great example of a species that gets a bad rap, although it's sometimes right. So Maclat's pythons get big. They get this big. This is me holding a full-sized Maclat's python, which is actually the father of my Maclat's python, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a great animal, don't get me wrong. However, she's pretty defensive, and this is pretty normal for younger Maclat's pythons. The problem is if you get an older one, they're big and then the bites hurt. So when Pittsburgh bites now, it's kind of like, whatever, not a big deal. But once he gets bigger, if we don't deal with it now, which we have been doing, much better. You take him out of the enclosure, he doesn't try to bite anymore, but inside the enclosure, he's just, you know, a striky machine. So it's just a testament to you have to work with these animals. Definitely defensive, not aggressive, not trying to hurt us whatsoever. Just a little bit timid, but once you get him out of the enclosure, he realizes, oh, if this thing wanted to eat me, it would have. I guess I'm just gonna chill. Okay, let's talk about another lizard. Number 4 on the list is Mushu. Mushu is my tegu, and as you can see, a wiggly worm right now. Mushu has a dirt hat on because, well, we woke her up out of brumation. Brumation is kind of like hibernation, very similar. Reptiles do it. They don't go quite as dormant. They do wake up a little bit every once and then to get water or something like that. So that's why it's different. She's been in brumation since probably October or so. It's middle of January when we're filming this today. And we woke her up for the video because, I mean, it's fine to wake them up out of brumation once in a while to check on them. I mean, realistically, some people say you shouldn't, but I do that with all my animals that go into brumation. So she's kind of upset. But the reason that she's on the list is because she's gone through this puberty, it's like a tegu puberty, where she's a little bit more defensive than she was, because she used to be a puppy dog, basically, in terms of politeness. And then now also she's got this prey drive, which is a little crazy. Now, he did switch the strength of the UVB bulb, and it's a brand new UVB, or it was when we, I think October or September, whenever we decided to change her enclosure around. So maybe that could be it, because UVB is seen differently in reptiles than in humans, so everything looks different, which is why when you take a tegu outside for the first time, they might act a little psychotic. So this animal is just a little bitey because she thinks everything is food. So that's another thing too, is people will say, oh, it's an aggressive animal, when really they just have a high food drive. Reticulated pythons aren't aggressive, they have an aggressive food drive. They're not trying to hurt you. And in the same case with Mushu here. So what do? We feed her. We take her out of the enclosure, we feed her, and then when she realizes when she's out, that's no longer feeding time, that helps. And what do we feed her? We feed her dubias, crickets, basically everything you can get from Flukers, which is my favorite supplier for feeders. So the crickets are fantastic. I actually got to go to Flukers last month in December and check out their facility. Way cleaner than I could ever imagine a bug farm being, if that's what it is. It's a farm for bugs. You figure it'd be disgusting. Barely any smell. Smells like citrus in most of the building because they actually make the Flukers food, which is an orange cube. It smells like citrus that you're going to feed the cricket because you have to feed your feeders in order for them to have any sort of nutrition whatsoever. And what I love about Flukers is they are super easy to deal with. I just go to chewy.com, put my order in for the Flukers feeders, crickets, or whatever, and I saw the way they pack them. You're never going to get a light count. Trust me, it's always going to be the perfect count or a little bit more. You're getting your money's worth. Plus, the price is there. The nutrition is perfect. I saw what they feed them. I didn't think in a million years I'd see someone take such good care of bugs, but Flukers does. And right now, if you use code ILOVEFlukers at checkout, when you spend $49 or more on Flukers lighting and substrate, you get a free $10 gift card for Chewy. So go to the link below, order your Flukers nutrition or the bugs themselves, or even a lamp or two. Whatever it is that you need, Flukers has it. It's on chewy.com. Next, let's talk about the obvious one. This is obviously the most aggressive animal, emerald tree boas. Same thing. They're defensive. They're not aggressive. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not going after you. First of all, they have a crazy prey drive. So they do kind of follow around like, oh, what's going on? Because they've got heat pits in their face. They have labial heat pits that see you as a heat signature, which they think is going to be prey. Because think about it. They're up in the Amazon and they're these little noodles. So they're going to be defensive, first of all. They have to protect themselves against birds, and monkeys will try to mess with them, and other animals too. And then every time they need to eat, they can't go to the grocery store like the rest of us. They have to wait for something like a tree rat or some sort of bird or bat to fly by them. And when they do, they strike first and ask questions later because it's so seldom that they get that opportunity. So their prey drive is crazy, and they're defensive because, I mean, they have a very fragile skeleton. So if you try to mess with them, you can hurt them. And the best way to get someone not to handle you and you don't want to be handled is to use the biggest teeth of any non-venomous snake, which emerald tree boas have, and bite them. And it is an event if you get bit by them, but it's the same thing with, say, I don't know, a big dog. Obviously, big dogs make amazing pets. Of course, if they bit you, it'd be a problem, but they don't because you know how to handle them. Same thing with emeralds. And generally, it's don't handle them. Now, of course, there's a lot of people that do have good success actually making them handleable, but as a rule, emerald tree boas, unless you work with them extensively, are likely going to be really defensive, not aggressive, really defensive. And of course, you can change that, but I also don't want to give you false hope that you get one and you're like, oh, I saw this person on YouTube handling theirs. It takes work. You can do it, but it takes work. And then for number 6, a species that gets a bad rap, and I think this is actually kind of silly, carpet pythons. So carpet pythons, they come in many shapes and sizes, locales and morphs and everything else, species even. What we have the smallest species of carpet python, or locale, which is Irianjaya or Popwin. You know, names always change. That is a cross with a jungle, which is kind of in the middle, but probably the prettiest. So an Irianjaya jungle carpet python, we have a pair of them. This is, I mean, they're a pretty big animal. These animals are probably about 6 feet long, but they're slender. They're not big, but the heads on them are crazy because they have big teeth. So they have to house those big teeth in their big heads. And the reason is, same thing with emeralds. I mean, they have to kind of strike at birds, which is mostly what they eat in the wild. And because they're arboreal, they do eat, you know, mammals that are up in the trees as well, but it's just a little bit more scarce. So they have the big teeth. If they bite you, it kind of sucks. But our carpets, knock on wood, they don't really have any inclination to bite at all. You take them out, they're super chill. They have been since we got them. But I think that carpet pythons just take a little bit more work than ball pythons, and because they're a starter snake or a cheap snake you can buy, people just expect them to be a starter snake and act like a ball python or a corn snake that's going to be mostly chill right away. You just have to put a little bit of work. When they're babies, they're a little bit nippy, but that's pretty normal. So the solution here is just handle them and get them used to you. Another one that's not going to make the list, Burmese pythons, for example. My adults are puppy dogs, but when they're babies, I mean, they hatch out and they're like pistons. They're just trying to get you, and they're not trying to get you for the sake of getting you. They're a brand new baby. Everything's trying to eat them. So that's why they act like that. And same with carpets. All right, let's get into the stuff. I didn't mean to put all like the super expensive animals right down the line, but it seems like the more expensive the animal that I buy, the more likely they are to try to be defensive with you. And we'll start off with Susan, who isn't, you know, really expensive. Akie monitors are pretty cheap now. You can buy them for, you know, between $400 and $600. Cheap relatively to what they used to be, I mean. Now, I was lucky someone gave me Susan because she needed a good home. As you can see, her toes are like basically nubs. They shouldn't be like this. It just happens because they don't have the proper care. So I got Susan like this. It's a small monitor species that generally is really easy to handle, but Susan came from a tough environment, a really rough upbringing, and she's bit Trish, my wife, more than a few times, and she tried to get her a bunch of times here. She's wiggly, and she doesn't have those claws to hold on, so she feels even more insecure. Now, we have her as more of an animal to look at and kind of interact with sparingly, because she handling not as well as most Akies do. So yeah, she'll try to bite you every once and then because she's trying to defend herself. And generally, if you leave her in the enclosure, it's the opposite with most things. She's kind of placid. You can pet her and she's fine, and you can feed her off of tongs or with your hands. I mean, sometimes she has bad aim, but she's mostly pretty chill. And then you get her out of the enclosure and she's like, what's going on? And then she kind of just gets a little scared. So we don't really handle her that much. But one that I want to handle, and a new animal, probably the most expensive one I own, is Stitch. This is a blue tree monitor. Now, I knew right away that she was going to be work, or he, I don't know. We can't figure out if it's a male or female yet. She's too young. He, she, I'm going to call her she. So Stitch is going to be a project. I knew this. The breeder told me this. Everyone I know who has tree monitors told me this. And the blues, as a stereotype, are a little bit more difficult than the blacks and greens and other varieties to tame down. However, I really, really want this animal to be handleable. I want this to be an ambassador, something that I can hand out to a child, supervised, of course, to handle. That type of animal. She's a baby now. She's going to get bigger. We're doing our best right now. She's bit Trish a few times. She's tried to get me once too. But in general, it's just because she's small, and that's what you can expect. So what we're doing to tame this animal out is getting her used to try to hand feed her. This is a project, and getting her used to handling. So this handling session went really well, actually, the one that you're watching for us to film. So we tried to do the B-roll today, everything, and she didn't try to bite at all. She was super chill. She did try to run away and jump, but that's pretty normal as well. They're an arboreal lizard that has that prehensile tail, super duper cool, and they do try to jump from branch to branch in the wild. So a little jumpy. And when we first got her, which was only about a month and a half ago, very, very defensive, tried to bite all the time. And as we handle her, she's taming out really, really well. So I'm proud of this one. Trisha's really doing most of the work. The next one is something that you won't expect, and that is Snoop. Now look at the size of this animal, and then look at the size of this animal. The difference is this guy, Frankie, is a Tonga banded iguana, and the one that you're looking at now is Snoop. Snoop is a Fiji banded iguana. Now I always call this a Fiji banded iguana. Technically Tonga is a little bit of a different area off of Fiji and their subspecies. Now the reason I got this animal is because I got Frankie a girlfriend in December. I made a whole video about it, and I want to breed the Fijis as well as the Tongas, so I got a male. and then I'm going to look for a female also. Now, the reason the guy who I bought it from sold this animal to me is because he was aggressive. There's a funny story with this animal. I've got a friend named Greg, Beneath the Canopy Exotics on Instagram. Highly recommend you check it out. Not the craziest production value in the videos. He's not trying to be like an influencer, but he's got crazy enclosures, crazy animals. Like, I love this Instagram account. Anyway, my friend Greg had this animal, Snoop, decided that he wanted to work with monitors more than anything else, and he was going to rehome this animal because it didn't fit his collection. And then he sold it at an expo. And then the last expo that I went to, I bought a Fiji banded iguana. On the way home, I asked the guy, hey, what's his name? He's like, oh, he came with the name Snoop. Like, really? Did it come from Greg? He's like, yeah. So my friend's Fiji banded iguana is now in my care, and I didn't buy it for my friend. Anyway, Greg said that it was a super chill animal, and in my experience, he has been. But when I took him out of the box the first time from the guy I bought it from, open mouth, trying to bite, very nervous. So I don't know what happened between Greg and me. I know the guy who I bought it from, was actually a great keeper. He's got a lot of other great animals. I've talked to the guy. I knew the guy before. So I don't know what's going on with Snoop, but I'm going to tame him down, and he's going to be just as chill as Mr. Frankie here. Let me know in the comment section below your most aggressive animal. And of course, if you didn't get the point of the video, none of these animals are aggressive. They're defensive or food hungry. With that, thanks so much for watching the video. Please hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel so much. Patreon supporters, you guys the best. Discounts on merch, videos early. The new channel is launching next month. You're going to get those videos much earlier. And I do videos Mondays and Thursdays. So see you in the next one.